Welcome to the Communication Diva Podcast, episode 125. Today's topic, how to handle a passive-aggressive person at work. Okay, well, fine then, Jen. Go ahead and talk about passive-aggressive people at work. I don't mind. No, really. That's your job, coming up with new and interesting subjects to talk about every week. I'm sure it's difficult to always think up something new, and I really think it's great that you're going to talk about this in such a public way with all your listeners.
Hello, this is Jen, and welcome to episode 125 of the Communication Diva Podcast. This show offers tips and ideas and advice on how to improve your communication skills in the workplace and in your life so that you will have better and deeper relationships and so that you will ultimately have a job or a career that you love. I'm really glad that you're here with me today. Last week's episode was very popular, and it was great to see how many people enjoyed it. If you like this episode, I'm going to ask you to take a moment, please, to share it afterwards with someone else using social media or email or by whatever means you usually do share things so that more people might be reached and helped with the information that I provide. It takes hours to produce the content at Communication Diva, and the podcast is always free. So I do rely on your help to spread the word. And if you have just a moment after you're done listening to share it, I really would appreciate it. And you can feel good knowing that you might just have helped someone somewhere in the world by sharing the episode. Well, today's topic is something that you've probably encountered before somewhere, a person who is behaving in a passive-aggressive way. You might have had moments of it yourself because we all have the ability to be passive-aggressive sometimes, depending on the context. You know how sometimes you behave a certain way with a certain group of people and another way with another group of people, and sometimes it is situational. In a certain situation, we might be passive, we might be aggressive, we might be assertive, or we might be passive-aggressive. So it depends on context. And again, we all have the ability to go to these different forms of behavior. But if you find yourself having to spend time on a regular basis with someone in the workplace, for example, who displays passive-aggressive behavior as their default way of behaving, then this episode is for you. So let's just jump in and define passive aggression. What is it? Well, according to Dr. Daniel K. Hall-Flavin of the Mayo Clinic, passive-aggressive behavior is a pattern of expressing negative feelings but not doing it openly. What a person with passive aggression says and then does can be two completely different things. For example, this person might seem to agree with something verbally, even to the point of being enthusiastic when they're agreeing. But then the same person might do what they can, including miss deadlines, to see that the thing they agreed to doesn't ever happen. So they say one thing, but then they don't follow through. And a passive-aggressive person can hurt you, but because it's done in such a subtle way, it's very easy for the person to deny that there was ever any intent behind it, which can make it impossible to prove if you're trying to prove that someone is behaving this way toward you. I had a manager once who did things like not submit my expense claims to the correct department or not submit them at all. And then weeks later, when I was wondering where my refund payments were, I had to chase down the paper trail only to find that the information I had submitted was still sitting in her in-basket, despite me having handed the package directly to her weeks before. Other people received their refunds in really good time, but I had to play this game. And her response was, several times, "Oh, I'm sorry, I must not have seen them in my basket." Right. Another time, my information went directly to payroll, and I was reprimanded for not getting it signed by management, despite having it handed it in directly into her hands. So thankfully, that time I had learned and kept copies and notes about exactly what I had done and when. Documentation. That's classic passive aggression, and it's more than frustrating for the person on the receiving end. Believe me. So, what are some of the signs of passive aggressive behavior? Well, there are a few. If you listened to the last episode, you will have heard me talk about negativity. And often passive aggressive people have negative, cynical, or even sometimes hostile attitudes. Grumbling abounds, as does sarcasm. And sometimes a person with passive aggressiveness as their default, and remember, I'm talking here about a person who does this consistently, not somebody who does it as a one-off. So someone with passive aggressiveness is extremely critical, and especially extremely critical of authority figures, doesn't like authority very much. This person might complain a lot, might be argumentative, might talk a lot about not feeling appreciated, or talk about how they've been cheated by someone or by the system, in quotation marks, whatever the system might be. So not an all-round positive, happy person. Passive aggressive people take pleasure in doing what the manager in my example did and use procrastination as a form of resistance. Or they might make intentional mistakes to thwart the process or do a poor job on purpose. And you might think, well, why on earth would they do that? Because wouldn't that reflect badly? But remember, it's a pattern. And it's an act of resistance in many cases. And these things, by making intentional mistakes, by thwarting the process, by doing a poor job, these all make life difficult for others. Of course, when confronted, this person will always have a rational sounding excuse, making it really difficult to pin them down. Passive aggression can be sneaky, it can be dramatic, and it can definitely escalate. Consequences of this kind of behavior in the workplace can be as small as not enjoying the person that you work with, to as big as all-out workplace toxicity. And this also, of course, depends on who the passive-aggressive person is and what role they play, and most importantly, how much power they hold in a company. Trust is very quickly eroded when you discover that you can't count on this person to do what they say they will do, that you can't count on them to do it in good time or to do it at all. And it's very difficult to take what a passive-aggressive person says at face value, because once you've been burned, once you've had an experience of the person saying one thing and then behaving in a completely different way afterwards, you stop being able to count on them. You stop trusting them. You stop believing anything they tell you. Negative, sarcastic, and suspicious behavior is demoralizing to a workplace environment. And this kind of behavior can cause a drop in creativity. It can cause a drop in productivity, which of course affects the bottom line. And even more scary, it can affect the health and the well-being of the workers that have to work with the person. So it has negative consequences, this kind of behavior, if it's not addressed in the workplace setting, if it's something that is consistently happening. And again, somebody might be very quiet about it and not disrupt the whole workplace. But there are people that are passive aggressive enough in the workplace, and again, depending on their role, can create complete havoc in a workplace. Now, not all cases are this dramatic, of course. So like I said, there are passive aggressive people who keep it at a low level. And every single one of us, as I said at the beginning, regardless of our default style of communication and conflict, can use passive aggression when it suits us. So before you get all self-righteous and feeling superior here, just none of us is immune to this. We can all behave this way. It's when a person gets great glee from the nasty games they're playing, that's when damage gets done. And that's when damage gets done to individuals and to entire organizations. It's not nice. So what can you do? Well, some of it depends on what role you play in the workplace. And there are some instances in which there's not a lot you can do, especially if the person behaving this way is in a position of power. You might find yourself having to do serious discernment and, searching within yourself as to whether or not to stay in that environment. And of course, that's only if you have that kind of choice at all. And I know that some people might not have that choice at all, might not feel that they can change positions, change roles, change companies for financial reasons. There's all sorts of reasons why that would be an impossible thing. But if it was possible to make a move, it might be that it's easier and healthier in the long run to do that. But here are 7 things that you can do if you have to stay. So as with everything, the very first step is awareness. Oh, so that's what's going on here. That can be quite revelatory. Once you can see that what you are dealing with in a workplace situation is indeed passive aggression, it might be easier for you to deal with it. But make sure that this is what you're dealing with. Sometimes a sullen or cynical person is just sullen or cynical and nothing more. So to that end, number 2 is to learn as much as you can about what passive aggressive behavior is. So there's a lot written about it, and there are probably more podcasts and YouTube videos and things about it. So become an expert on the signs and symptoms so that you know for sure that this is what you are dealing with before you start labeling people. And I would not recommend telling the other person that you know that they are passive aggressive. That's a slippery slope and a dangerous move that leaves you open to all sorts of trouble. So we don't go around diagnosing people. This is for your own self-improvement and your own self-growth. Is the idea to learn as much as you can about it so that you can figure out if that is indeed what you're dealing with, and then learn how you can behave and act around this person to make your life easier. So one of the things to remember is that you can never ever change another person's behavior. You can only change your own. So that is the best place to start, and that's always what I recommend is look inwards, look at yourself, about self-awareness and self-growth in communication. So number 1 is to be aware that perhaps this is what it is that you're dealing with. Number 2 is learn as much as you can so that you are informed. And then number 3 is get assertive. And that's really easy to say, but it's an ongoing practice. Being assertive is easy for some people. It is really not easy for a lot of other people. So if you haven't already done so, take a listen to episode 28 of this show, which is all about helping you to be more assertive. You don't want to allow the person to continue to take advantage. So one of the things about being assertive involves setting clear boundaries. So clear timelines, clear deadlines, clear expectations, and I would say clear consequences. And communicate these clearly. If you ramp up your own clear and assertive communication, there can be no mistake that that you are not doing your part. So think about that. How assertive are you? How clear are you in your communication? I need this report on my desk by Friday. There's no deadlines, no other extensions, no different deadlines. I need to have this thing on Friday, and if not, then whatever your consequence is going to be. So clear, assertive, not aggressive, but clear, assertive boundaries. Number 4 is don't bite. Yelling, being angry, being nasty back, these all fall into the same category as what the other person is doing. So don't play the game. Don't bite because it's their game. And it's no fun if there's no rise coming from it, if there's no reaction coming from it. Don't stoop to the same tactics. Don't bite. Number 5 is if you know this person is playing games, protect yourself. CC someone higher up in all your email correspondence so that when you're sending an email, it's sent to more than one person. So that there's proof that it's been sent to more than one person. There's some other set of eyes taking a look at it. Keep notes and keep copies of things you've sent on and copies of things you request. If it's verbal communication with this person, have someone else present when dealing with the person verbally if there is no paper trail. And you can do that with subtlety. There are laws and things around recording people, so I would be careful there. But if you have to talk to this person and you want it to go well, and you think it maybe won't if you're on your own, bring someone else with you. If you have to bring in help from higher up, then you have to. If you have to bring in a supervisor or a manager. But if you can't do that, limit your interaction with the person and don't give them any extra information about yourself that could be used against you. Remember, if trust is broken, that would be trust in all areas. So keep your private life private so that this person has no extra information. It's sad that you might have to start behaving this way, but again, when trust is broken and when the other person's behavior is impinging on your work and on how you are perceived, on your reputation as an employee, then it's best to take precautions if you have to. Number 6 is stay alert and do be really aware of your own responses and your own behaviors. You might be able to change your own responses, and you might be able to reframe what is going on in your own mind so that it doesn't bother you as much as it used to. It's about trying to take the higher road and not getting mired in the muck of the drama. Maybe the person isn't trying to be sneaky and nasty. Maybe the person is dealing with some truly hard things in their own life. And we can never be completely sure. One of my very favorite people said to me once, and I know I've said this before on the show, but I love this quote: "Behind every face is a soul at work." Behind every face is a soul at work. So it could be that there's a whole lot of hurt going on behind the scenes that you know nothing about. And the behavior of this person is the result of that hurt or that situation that they have not shared. So, it's hard to judge why other people are behaving the way they behave. There is a saying that says that all behavior makes sense to someone. And I think that's absolutely true. That passive-aggressive behavior makes sense to the person who's doing it. It may not make a lot of sense to the rest of us who have to work with that person, but there is some reason. There is something that person is getting out of it. And it's, I think what I'm trying to say is remember compassion. And the way that you act reflects back to you. And the things that you say and the things that you do are a reflection of who you are. And if you are reacting to someone all the time rather than acting with integrity and with compassion and with as much understanding as you can, then we start getting into trouble when all we're doing all day is reacting to other people's behavior. Because lots of people don't behave well, including us. There are moments when we snap at somebody. There are moments when we say something in a tone of voice we didn't mean. There are moments when we roll our eyes and somebody sees us. Communication is an ongoing, constant practice, and none of us is an expert. Honest to goodness. So think about that. Behind every face is a soul at work. Even when they drive you crazy, when they're nasty and awful and do things that make you furious, try and take the higher road. And it's really hard to do that. Believe me. But it's worth it in the end. Number 7 is stay positive if you can and model positive behavior. As I said earlier, don't bite, but also don't sink to the same level by being passive aggressive or negative or nasty back. A passive aggressive person does not speak openly about how they actually feel. So for you to model great communication by being open about your own feelings and by practicing excellent communication strategies, you will end up healthier for it in the end. And you can feel good in your own heart and mind knowing that you behaved in an upstanding way, even when the other person is not. So those are my those are my things today. Those are my pieces of advice for the show today. I hope you found useful information there and that you would take a moment now after you stop the recording to share this with somebody in your life or with your social media networks. Or even email it to a friend or say, hey, you got to listen to this episode. That would be great. I am madly working on the job interview skills course that is in production now and will be ready, I hope, before the end of May 2017 or the very beginning of June. So stay tuned for that. It's so far it's got about 7 sections and 18 videos, and it's going to be how to successfully navigate a job interview. And there's lots of information jam-packed into this. So that's what I'm busy working on right now. And there's lots and lots of content. So if you're listening to this after May 2017, then head over to courses.communicationdiva.com. That's courses.communicationdiva.com to see what courses are available to help you to get the job, to love your work, or to advance your career. Thanks once again for being here. And until the next time, this is Jen Swanson. Take good care, practice good communication, and help to make this world a gentler, more kind, more compassionate place.